Thank you so much, Richard. Last but not least, when I'm referring to speakers, I want to also invite on stage advisor to the Minister of Agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture of the Republic of Lithuania, Kristina Simonaitytė. I will remind everybody of the QR code that you can scan and ask your questions. And I want to immediately refer to pick up on what Richard has said when you say that the door we should open the door to innovation. So my initial question is very simple. Shouldn't the door have been opened already?
Look, it's open, but it's open a crack, if we're honest about it. I mean, if you look at the journey startups take, it's still a real slog, and people take enormous risks, often at personal cost, to move forward with that. And there are many things we can do. I mean, at the simplest, continue to invest in education for entrepreneurs, for startups, just to create that foundational capability that we need. There is so much more we can do within Europe to align the capital instruments that we have. So, look, if I look at the EIT and the EIC, for example, we're working on that collaboration, but of course it could be better. It could be easier and quicker, and frankly, let's just take a slightly higher risk profile on this in terms of access to money. And there are some regulatory issues. And I would love communities like these, and we want to be at the forefront of that, to maybe, if I can say it here, a little less diplomatic in where we need to be, a little less guarded in our words. Fundamentally, regulations today is slowing or stopping novel food products, novel ingredients, novel technologies getting to market. And we are losing ground to America, we're losing ground to Singapore, we're losing ground to Israel. If we want that to continue, that's our choice. But as a community, we need to get on the front foot and say, this isn't good enough for us, and we want change. And I think those three things will make a real difference.
So if that is not good enough, as you have said, we cannot make it, I mean, the products do not make it fast enough to the market, right? Would you maybe share some success stories of EIT Foods, specific examples that would have made fast enough to the market and are successful models that we could be, exploring and talking about today?
Yeah, sure. Look, we've got an amazing portfolio of startups. It's hard to pick a couple. I'm going to call out Nappy Ferin, who are a Polish startup. They've just raised another 2.5 million. They've done amazing work to create novel proteins from side streams and waste streams. And they have broken through. So those products are getting to market, but it's been, a 7 or 8 year journey for them, Marilisa. So yeah, they've stuck with it. They've broken through. They've raised plenty of capital. They've done an amazing job. And now they've proven the model for converting what others see as waste into real value for the economy. Another startup I love is a company called Agrain that take spent grain from brewers. So grain, I should know the market price right now. What's the price of ton per wheat? Maybe 100 euros a ton, something like that?
Vidmantas?
Yeah.
Would you know that from the industrialist
I would say so, a little bit higher at that moment, some 130, but neverthelheless, the prices are much more lower than it was a few years ago.
Exactly. So let's take it, because I'm not that good at maths, I'm going to stick with 100. 100 euros a ton leaves the farm gate. So the farmer collects 100 euros of value for a product. That goes to the brewer, they brew with it, and then they have spent grain, which they typically pay to be disposed of. This company, Agrain, take that grain and they can generate 500 euros of value from the spent grain. So they're taking something which was otherwise waste and generating 5 times the original value of what people thought the value was. And they do that they turn it into a lovely flour, it's all malty and delicious, and they turn it into multiple products that can be used to substitute for dairy. But actually what it opens the door to, and they're not doing this, but it opens the door to really innovative business models. So you're a farmer today, it's a linear business model, but how about grain as a service? So you ship your grain to the brewer, they use it and you ship it back. You ship it to the miller, they use it and turn it into a flour, and you ship back the residual and you use that for maybe some interesting proteins in a cooperative, or you use it for cattle feed, or you use it as a fertilizer. So what we're seeing both is the product innovation, but the spark of business model innovation. And that's what we find really exciting at EIT Food.
Thank you so much for your insights. Mr. Janulevičius, you were nodding your head, what is the current situation with the bioeconomy industry in Lithuania in more general terms?
Yeah, it's not easy to say. It was very interesting sentences said by the Minister of Agriculture that, let's say, we are still the biggest exporters of the raw materials, of the grains and so on. And at that moment, I think it's a huge possibility and possible synergy inside the industry and inside the agri, all the directions, because we need to produce the big added values here inside, not to be exporters of the raw materials, but exporters of the different products with a much more big added value. And we are talking, I think, since last few years about that. I see some positive changes now, even in some bigger agri concerns, which says in the past, no, we have our niche, we have our direction, we will export the pure grains, we know how to do this is the best business solutions. And now we see.
So you're saying practically nothing is changing? Nothing has been changing in the last several
it's
years?
Changing, it's really changing, but of course for this kind of changes you need the innovations, you need the capital. And as the colleague says, access to the capital here in Lithuania, of course, I would say so, not the best. And if you will see from the European, and then Marius Vashaga will tell me the same, European Central Bank says that we are with the lowest access to the capital, mostly from the whole European Union. And for these innovations, you need to have the access to the capital. And I think it looks that sometimes Lithuania looks on the capital side as some suburbs of European Union. Not with the ideas, not with the people, not with the young entrepreneurs with the new ideas, but just with the access to the capital. I think this is problem number one. But of course, all of the countries of EU has a challenging time now because the interest rates was growth because the inflation was, and this of course not giving the better access to the capital. Of course, geopolitical situation across Baltic states and Lithuania not the best as well, while the investors may be not very active at that moment in this kind of direction. I think this is the situation which a little bit stops the development. But this is a huge future. We know this in combination with the industry, with a different energy sector, especially here in Lithuania, with different new technologies which we can implement with the new generation of the greenhouses, to using the solar, semi-transparent solar, different possibilities. We're on the right way, but we need to have the access to the capital.
When you talk about interest rates, I saw you commenting on social networks. I understand that industrialists expected the central bank to already lower the interest rates by now.
Yes, we hope. We hope that in the June we will have this reduction of the interest rates. But the 88% of the Lithuanians, people who take the credits and companies, they have the 6 months Euribor. That means if they will start to reduce in June, realistically we will feel only in December. If they will start to do this in July, what is the most nowadays, we will feel this in February next year only.
Okay.
That means these half years will be quite difficult for the whole sectors.
So access to capital is the problem number one, as you have said, but let me go back to the statement that you refer to what the Minister of Agriculture has said about, we cannot compete with countries with better raw materials. We have to create added value, and we have been saying that for many years, as far as I understand, but not much has been changing. Could I maybe get this back to the to the Vice Minister of the Agriculture and ask specifically what is being done about it, knowing that there's such a big awareness, and the minister has expressed it in a very, very clear way that we just cannot compete with countries with better raw materials.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I would just like to reiterate that thought that the minister has said. So indeed, we are still mostly producers of raw commodities and exporters, producing for exporting, right? So since the start of our term, the minister is really focused on how can we transform this economy towards more from moving from raw commodities to producing the products of higher value. And as it was mentioned here already, these changes, they don't happen overnight, since the economy is just so entrenched, and that's what people know. This is how we've done for many years. So these changes, they take time, they are slow, but that's what we are working towards, and that's exactly what when we were planning our strategic plan for agriculture and rural development, also introducing measures that would encourage especially small and medium farmers to cooperate, and just in general to support these types of farms to move towards the...
Would you name a measure for us to understand better what you're referring to?
Well, okay, so I can talk specifically about what we are supporting from the bioeconomy perspective directly. So we have a measure from the strategic plan that's dedicated for bioeconomy projects. It's a 50 million euros measure for 5 years, and the projects are specifically for processing of these raw materials into a higher value products. And what's also very important in this measure is that the projects, they should bring innovation, like something that hasn't been done in Lithuania. And that's kind of the idea to promote these higher value products. But also I think that in general what we are supporting is not just specific bioeconomy measures, but this transformation of the agriculture sector. And it was mentioned also these other streams of revenue and bringing back to the farm what was previously considered as waste. So, for example, the innovations and the developing of ecosystem of biomethane, and the other EU funds have supported the building of biomethane plants, to produce the biogas or biomethane. But then, what today we need to be more, aware of or consider is the other side. So, how do we supply these plants with raw material, right? So, for example, biomass from grasslands or our wetlands or otherwise. And how to ensure that the farmers are aware of the benefits that they can get in return. So biomethane, the plants, they produce a byproduct, which is digestate, which can be returned back to the farm in the form of fertilizer. So, I think the question here is how do we arrange this ecosystem in a way? How do we that all these connections are apparent to the farmers and to other stakeholders? And so I think that's kind of the main question of today as well, how to be aware of these possible pathways in the future.
What about Estonia? Are you facing similar problems? You personally have contributed to the Estonian bioeconomy roadmap. Would you share the challenges here, and do the problems coincide with ours?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here in Vilnius. And as I always say, that I'm one of the bioeconomy evangelists in Estonia, and I try to speak about the bioeconomy in every occasion. So
we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, stage is mine. But I would say that it has been really quite a long journey in order to have finally some kind of strategical document which will give some kind of concrete actions as well in order to achieve very high visions what we have. And the vision is that the bioeconomy could be the backbone of our future economy. So as we see in the ministry that the future economy is bioeconomy, there is no other way actually. And if we speak about the green transition, it's also obvious that the bioeconomy is the enabler of the green transition, and green transition is obviously not possible without the bioeconomy. But the questions about higher value and how we can use the raw material what we have as well in Estonia, quite a lot, agricultural raw materials, and of course in Estonia the forestry is very important as well, in economic terms even more important actually compared to food and agricultural sector. But it's the same situation in Estonia, that we are already for years speaking that we should use the raw material smarter, better, and give higher value to it. But still, if you see the export numbers and what we are exporting, it is still raw timber or raw cereals or raw milk.
Okay, but have you come closer to using, to the smarter use of raw materials? Did you make any significant steps or not at all?
Yes, we have done really huge steps, I would say so. There have been several quite high investment measures from RRF, specifically targeted to the adding value of bioresources. There was about 30 million euros investment, which is ongoing currently. And there are also other actions in place. For example, some Estonian enterprises are very good in order to apply circular bio-based Europe joint undertaking investments and flagships investments to Estonia. So I would say it's have been about 60 million euros investments in order to really boost processing of bioresources and biomaterials, especially in the forest sector and food and forest chemistry sectors. But agricultural side and food part is a little bit slower, I would say, because it's very traditional and there is a lot of inertia within it. As I see that farmers in Estonia would like to be just farmers, not chemists or energy entrepreneurs. But here comes the thing that we are looking really carefully, that the solution for that is that the building the clusters and building the industrial symbiosis between the different sectors within the bioeconomy is the key within it, because bioeconomy is not about the sectors, because you can start in one sector and end up in other sector. And that's why I don't really like to speak about sectors when we speak about the bioeconomy. There is no sector as such, because the bioeconomy is related to everything.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe I could just briefly go back to Lithuania and ask Kristina if there are aspects from which we could learn when we listen to the Estonian example. Any success stories that we would want to pick up on and carry out here. What are your thoughts when you were listening to the Estonian example?
Well, I think I would like to hear more about the Estonian, the strategy that they have developed, because we do not have one in Lithuania, and I think we will talk probably more about that. But how necessary it is to have the strategy to really move forward in this topic, and I think there might be everyone might have a different answer here, but I think what I would agree with is that some kind of a roadmap with maybe targets and goals would be necessary just for us to be able to measure our success. How, as you were asking, so how fast are we moving, what we are actually doing, can we show any examples and good success stories? So I think having that kind of document, roadmap, strategy, something would help us to address that as well more successfully. And also I think another question that I would have, and it would be interesting to hear from the Estonian experience, and you mentioned specifically that you are not, you don't want to talk about different sectors, but I think to agree on producing this kind of, whole government kind of document, you do need to talk, with different ministries, and so how that process is going, how can we find a solution and a collaboration between the different sectors in this case in producing something that's above sectors?
That is a very good question. I will ask it a little bit later. Let us now move to the Commission, because we have started talking about roadmaps and guidelines. That's something that we expect from the EU always. What role does the European Commission play in harmonizing bioeconomy policies throughout and initiatives throughout the EU?
I think we try to play a very active role. We are playing a very active role, and in 2018 bioeconomy strategy has been produced, but I remember those times of 2018, and this was just pre-Green Deal times, so the times were completely different. And I think now the way that the bioeconomy can really take off and take the flight is with the Green Deal policies. Green Deal policies, because we have very clear targets which help to businesses to think for the future, to put the investments correctly, and to know that that the future will be green. And actually, the way that the things have been put now at the European level, they clearly show a very clear road to 2050, which is the climate neutrality goal, 2050. Then we have a 2030 goal of reducing the CO2 emissions by 55%. Now, in order to even have some middle grounds, we have the 2040 goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 90%, which was just proposed by European Commission. Where does that bring us? That brings us that the investment which is coming from the EU's perspective, be it the Recovery and Resilience Facility, be it the structural funds that are coming to Lithuania, they are also being channeled for reaching those goals. For that reason, for example, the Recovery and Resilience Facility that has been created after the COVID, it has very clear percentage that has to be devoted to the green goals. And of course, bioeconomy is part of that particular goal. So, we have been also speaking a lot during this Commission term about the circular economy. And I think here we have to also introduce the angle of circularity into the bioeconomy. We should not be looking at it in a complete isolation. It's the circularity, it's the chemicals. We have introduced the guidance or the strategy for how we can develop the chemicals and how can they become more bio-based. So it's not only agriculture, you have so many angles in this, and we are working on those. And I think what is important is to know that in the future, it simply has a certain inbuilt agenda towards 2030, 2040, 2050. And I really think that this will help bioeconomy to pick up.
If we refer a little bit to the Estonian, Lithuanian part of the discussion, should every member state have a strategy on bioeconomy?
It's a question. It's a valid question, I think, which is to be answered depending on each member state, on the way how they work. It's for some, it's important to have a strategy. Maybe others can have an action plan. Maybe they can have it as a priority for themselves. Probably it does help when you put things on paper and when everybody agrees it. If you prepare the strategy and discuss it with the industries, with the stakeholders and so on, everybody is happy with the result, and then everybody's kind of like to work for that more. So from that perspective, yeah, perhaps. But this is not a real prerequisite for achieving the bioeconomy development.
Mm-hmm. Vidmantas?
I just want to remember that in 2013, Estonia says that they want to be in the future since 2030 competitive without support, any EU support on the agriculture sector. This was kind of strategy, was very ambitious. Of course, I hear now, maybe it's not very popular nowadays, to say that to survive without any support from EU on the agri. Did this strategy was finished or?
Yeah, let's get a brief comment. Was that the ambitious?
Because it was really ambitious, and it was as a North Star for Lithuania. Maybe we can do this the same, but we didn't listen nowadays.
Have you managed to reach the goal to do without the EU support?
You know already the answer.
Okay, you don't want to comment on that, but maybe you could then comment on the ministry to ministry, the aspect that Kristina has mentioned. How has the communication between the different ministries been going?
Yeah, that is really important question because, the previous question was about is it really necessary to have kind of a strategy at all So I would say that the paper itself is doing nothing. We have thousands of strategies, papers, roadmaps, whatever, but I would say the importance of this exercise is exactly that the ministries and the stakeholders and universities and entrepreneurs are thinking together about the issues what we have in this field and about the possibilities what we have in this field. And as well, it is important that during this process, really the meaning of bioeconomy becomes more understandable, because I would say that most of us is understanding what the bioeconomy is, but the tricky part of the term is that let's say the food production is also part of the bioeconomy. We have been producing food thousands of years already. The same applies to forest, and that's why for people it's difficult to understand why we are now speaking about the bioeconomy. And I always say that the most important within is that it is the alternative of the fossil-based world, and that's the key within. But speaking about cooperation between the ministries, it has not been very easy, I would say, because there are no surprise, because it's not the question that there is not possible to cooperate, but in Estonian case, circular economy, for example, is responsibility within the Ministry of Climate, and the Ministry of Climate is now very, very huge ministry, because
it's not the Ministry of Environment, but the Ministry of Climate.
Ministry of Climate. This was changed during this summer, and it entails now also some parts of the former Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Environment and some other. It's really Ministry of everything, I would say. And as I said, they have the responsibility for developing the circular economy, and so on, and so forth. But when we speak about the bioeconomy, it's really difficult to put where should it be within the whole system of governmental policies. And this, in Estonian case, we even have developed a new term for the bioeconomy. In English, it's easy, it's circular bioeconomy, but we have in Estonian language put them together and use the
What does it sound like?
word. It's ringbiomajandus. It's circular bioeconomy, but in Estonian it's a little bit different.
So you merged everything together for the communication between ministries to be easier, because you put everyone
exactly
together.
for that reason that we will not speak about circular economy and bioeconomy, but we bring them together because they are really interrelated and it's really important. But still, I would say that the whole process of the development of the roadmap was really important also for us, for showing to the government, because this paper was approved by the government, that the government also understands that there is something called circular bioeconomy, because I'm not very sure they understand probably the circular economy part, even though they are thinking it's a waste management, but anyway.
Okay.
And currently, imagine that the energy issues, for example, are or were more important to the government level, or the war in Ukraine. The questions like that are always more important than the question of the, sadly, bioeconomy roadmap for the government level. But this process of developing the roadmap was really important in Estonian society to show that there is something we can achieve more.
Thank you so much for sharing all this. I want to refer now to Kristiina, who hasn't spoken during this panel yet, and maybe we could then, before we get into questions, because there are so many questions, and thank you so much for typing them. I will try to get as many of them as we can, but let's discuss the youth aspect, because you emphasized it a lot, Kristiina, and you have said that youth engagement is also very important. How can we empower the youth to become active participants in bioeconomy? What is being done already? What are the measures that work, and what are the measures that we have not really implemented yet?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's going to be a whole panel on the youth empowerment, but I'll try to answer just a little bit reflecting on what has already been said in the panel. So when we talk the strategies, when we talk the foundation from which some kind of action steps come, I always say, let's look what's already been done. For example, lots of initiatives coming from EU already are towards greener, towards bioeconomy. So then the next step is on national level also to implement such schemes. And as Vidmanda said, very good, when we talk about biotechnologies, when we talk about startups, when we talk about youth, these type of technologies, they really need capital. So assessment to the capital, biotechnologies are very expensive technologies to implement, to work with them, to scale them. So when we set ambitious goals, but we don't have any schemes for the funding on those goals, so it's impossible. It's going to be impossible. And even for the farmers, for example, in Lithuania, I would say that farmers are really keen to implement the new technologies, and they really want to try new technologies. But
so you wouldn't say that Lithuanian farmers are like Estonian ones who just want to be farmers but don't want to be chemists?
No,
as you have said.
I think our farmers, some of them are already doing researches on their farms on their own, like implementing new technologies. But again, we turn to that all the piloting, all the new things, they need actual funding. So it's, again, I turn to that. It's not only the collaboration on the national level between different ministries, but it's also coming from EU directly. Last year, for the first time, actually, commissioners started to talk between them that even different cabinets should be collaborating, should be co-funding from different initiatives. And we've seen already many fantastic initiatives coming with the funding, such as startup villages, regional innovation valleys, also talking about the possibilities for the bioeconomy.
Thank you, Christina. We have really many very good questions. I think I will refer the first one to Richard, who has been, listening very carefully, nodding his head, and I'm sure you will have an excellent response to this. No pressure. How can we convince the policymakers to be more innovative in the decision-making process? Clearly, we need policymakers who understand the ecosystem we are in, an Anonymous is saying. So what can we do to push?
Yeah, policymakers, it's one of those amorphous groups of people. And I mean, ultimately, policymaking is a process of engagement and inspiration. And the people I know in the policy sphere, they're looking for that inspiration. They're looking for the examples of people who've done amazing things and how that rolls up through to change. I think, number one, more of this sort of thing that is overtly about showcasing the potential for change, but bringing policymakers into that environment. And I would say at EIT Food, our engagement with the DGs has been really, really positive in this aspect. They've now come to us and said, okay, we want to listen about what your community, listen to what your community can do on protein diversification, for example, or listen to what your community is proposing on regen ag. So I think number one, it's just a bit of a change in the tone of voice. If we put policymakers on a pedestal and treat them with a bit of a a bow and a scrape, we're probably going to miss the inspiration and a bit of a spark and challenge that will actually get them thinking. The second is probably pick a couple of breakthrough topics. And I mean, listening, I wouldn't want to do your jobs. I mean, it's so broad what you have to do, and there's so many policy interventions that we could do. And I think within this is one of the existential European challenges: is where do you focus your attention? For us in EIT Food, and I know this, if we sat around a table, we'd have a million different things. For us in EIT Food, absolutely there would be a focus on how do you get novel foodstuffs that are directly related to today's technologies around precision fermentation, proteins, etc. How can we get those to market more quickly? There's a clear challenge to address there, and that gives you a point punch on policy to say, let's see if we can break through there. That's number one. Another one will be almost at the other end of the spectrum, the farming policy. So how can we use farming policy to give farmers the courage, the de-risk what they're doing so they can make changes? And again, farmers are business people. They take decisions every day, and most of that risk sits inside the farm gate. And so if you looked at policy and said policy to de-risk pre-farm gate, you could really make breakthroughs in enabling farmers to make the changes themselves without, maybe that's at the heart of your wishful transition to zero subsidy, is farmers will do it. They just need a little bit of help to give them the trust that when they take those steps, they're not going to die on their backsides when things go wrong.
Vidmantas, maybe you would want to comment very briefly on talking to policymakers and the change of tone as one of the aspects.
In general, of course, it's education and awareness. And of course, for the policymakers as well, what we are doing, I think, with the Green Deal, with the Green Direction, we are doing right things. We keep all the technologies inside us. We are more trustable in case as a country, all European Union in general. But I would say so, education. Education in these cases would give us possibility in the future to change these things for the younger generation. And about the farmers, yes, sorry to say this, but younger generation farmers, they're really innovative. They're really innovative. We can see this inside even Lithuania, they really do a lot of different practices, and they see to the agriculture as the normal business, how to improve this business. And of course, traditional farming still very active. We see this in Poland, in Lithuania as well. They always, since from the past, they always want to fight. Of course, they need to fight for some things. It's reasonable. But if we will see who is fighting now on the streets, mostly with the tractors, we see, I would say so, older generation farmers in general. That's mean education. I think this is the future, and of course this will make the influence on the policies.
And there is a question related to education as well. What about ethical educational part? Majority of agriculture people against innovation and new technology. For example, people slowly moving from common fertilizers to innovative bacteria based. So we can consider this a comment, and we'll move to a question. There are quite a few of them on startups. Do we have enough human resources at the Commission level, Mr. Vaščega, who will control or advise startups how to register new products, food, etc.?
May I just react also on the first, before going to startups, on skills and on younger generations, because I think there is a completely different point of view when you go to the younger farmers. But the same goes, because I had to work a lot on fisheries and on fisheries policies, and the same goes there. It's whenever you have the young fishers, it's a completely different story. For them, what they need help is to have a Wi-Fi on the ship and similar things, and clean toilets and so on. And then they're happy they do, because they think, okay, this is something which we should be doing from our hearts, maybe because our parents or our grandparents were doing. And I guess the same can be transformed in the agriculture. The more younger people, the more attractive it is for the younger people to come, the more innovation will come there. Now, on startups and Commission and the human resources, well, Commission normally looks huge from outside, thousands of people and so on. But indeed, when you go deeper and when you look exactly how many people deal with a particular issue at the European level. For example, let's say a few directors general that I know best. One is on environment. You have less than 400 people in that EU department. Is that a lot? Probably a bit more than Lithuanian Ministry of Environment, but it's about 450 million people. So indeed, it's a tiny administration if you take comparison to for how many people and for how many countries you have to deal. And this is a constant struggle. But okay, we try to work with the resources that we have without really, making them bigger, and reshuffle according to the priorities. And these type of things, they're taking place. And I think we are able to deliver the results. And I hope that it will be possible to do that in the future too.
What about financing? There is a question which I'm going to read out in Lithuanian and then briefly we'll translate it as well. There's a problem.
The most frequent problem related with startups is rescaling of results. Here we need businesses, not capital, and investments die in drawers.
Scaling of their results. We need capital other than venture capital. The involvement of capital, if there is no financing, the innovation dies in the doors. Is there any change foreseen on the EU and the Lithuanian level as well?
For
financing startups, scaling startups, because the innovations die in the doors, Geet is saying.
No, but I think we have quite a predictability at the EU budget on the financing, because it's being fixed for the 7 years periods, and we just had a midterm review which took place, and I think the Horizon funding and similar fundings, they stay as they are, and here, I think within the remits of the current budget that we have, which again, sometimes being thought that it is able to do everything, EU budget is around 160, 170 billion per year, which for a continent like this is not super huge. But there is a predictability, and I think then, of course, the question when it goes to the member states and how it's being taken up in the member states, but there it depends on each member state.
How do you think the EU could foster exchanges between startups, academia, and policymakers in order to keep the temperature under 1.5 by 2030? Make the change long-lasting and bearing positive economic and environmental externalities? What are the barriers for this and how to overcome them? Who would like to, to take this very important, yet a very general and a very big question? Richard?
Okay. It is a huge thing. Step one, let's just break that down. So what is the role startups have to play in the 1.5 challenge? It's enormous. They're bringing innovation in specific areas. So I would say if we can focus on what are the major interventions we're trying to make. So we're here on the bioeconomy. The bioeconomy has a number of very, very tangible opportunities in mitigating carbon emissions and potentially producing carbon sinks. So a focused discussion on that opportunity, bringing the startups, and I would say innovators. We focus on startups, and actually many of them fail, and quite rightly so. That's part of the process. There are innovators everywhere. There's innovators in our largest, oldest corporations as well. So if we think about startups and the innovators, bring them into that conversation, but with a really focused perspective on it, which is basically what we've done today. This is the kind of community and the kind of forum where you can get a channeled, focused discussion on what to do. Then what are the enablers? If we can get to these are the enablers we need, and being more direct about those asks. There's a lot of money in the EU available, but it's hard to ask for it in the right way. And I think if you can use a forum like this to be more Dutch direct, I work with a lot of Dutch colleagues, they're very, very direct about what they want. So let's get a bit more Dutch direct. We need this to happen.
That's a very specific advice. Let's get more Dutch. When it comes to the bioeconomy in Kristina, this will go to you. When it comes to the bioeconomy in agriculture, a lot depends on the correct use of the right fertilizers. What financial incentives are planned so that new advanced fertilizers developed in the scientific sector are produced and used in Lithuania?
So this is since in Lithuania most of the greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture specifically comes from use of nitrogen fertilizers. So this is a very important for us area, how to try to reduce that use and move towards different options. So I think what we, as the ministry, we are doing, we are, and something that wasn't mentioned really that much in the panel, is supporting the science and research into new products in a way. And I think the role of science in these discussions is also very important, and I think we should bring them more to the table and participate in these dialogues and help us to better both understand what bioeconomy is and also what the solutions are for the climate change, the biodiversity loss, and the pollution problems. And the same goes with the finding the alternatives to fertilizers in this very specific problem. So that's exactly what we are doing. We are supporting researchers and science institutions in Lithuania through various projects and direct funding for their projects that they want to, some questions to answer in over the longer term as well. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that we are doing.
Estonia, any incentives that you would want to share?
The question about the research and science and innovation funding it's obviously very important, because without it, it's not possible to find any new solutions. That's for sure, and that is one of the main pillars also in Estonian bioeconomy roadmap. But obviously, the Ministry of Rural Affairs and Agriculture is not only player on this field. Ministry of Education and other ministries also. And we are really looking into investments in order to give the possibilities to pilot and test the possibilities which are also worked out in the laboratories and in small scale. And there will be in a few years some kind of let's say development center in Estonia where it is possible to use, test and pilot the lab scale results of the biomass and bioproducts development. So it's really important. But I just wanted to mention about the innovation and in the farm sector of Estonia. To be fair, just of course there is also innovative farmers, and especially in younger generations. But obviously we are just a little bit maybe so quick in thinking compared to Lithuania or other countries. But
normally it's the other way around.
Yeah, but
we are not as quick as.
But anyway, it's really something I would also mention that in our education system and also in younger generation, they are really much think about the IT sector and see that is the future. But we also need a bubble in the bioeconomy sector, and there can be really good connection. You can use the IT and artificial intelligence solutions within the bioeconomy and the boost and find the solutions in the bioeconomy. So we have to also bring the bioeconomy more to the educational system in order to build the people who are able to find the new solutions.
I think that this is the aspect that we will maybe be able to cover during the youth discussion, because there were a lot of aspects that need, to be elaborated on, but we are running out of time and there are still questions. I'm so surprised that there are so many really, really good questions coming in. I think it has never happened before, so do continue that.
Trust your reads.
There are quite a few panel discussions to come. If we can make this as vibrant, I think we will end up having a very successful event. So thank you everybody for your contributions. I'm going to stop here because I'll just have to, but thank you for your questions, and thank you for your contributions, and thank you for being dynamic, and thank you for being so vibrant, and thank you for all that you're doing. The discussions will continue. We will now give a big round of applause to all our speakers of the panel.